I didn't get any information at all from, because like I said, you have only 10 seconds of fame. So make them count. Dapat umpisa pa lang, ano na, from the beginning, from the very beginning, you have the data firmly in your hand. So that when the reporter asks you, they're very basic naman ang questions of the reporters whenever disaster strikes. How many people died? That's it. How many people died and what are you doing to help them? That's it. Any other questions that's more enterprising on the part of the reporter? And of course, we'll always get the human interest after the main story. So what's the human interest? Maybe there's maybe somebody important died, something like that. So it's up to us. Now that's where the stories can be compared against each other. Who's better? It will all boil down to the better human interest story. So yun. Don't smile.
I think the floor is open for questions. We can queue here.
Good morning, I'm Arvin from BIARI. Just a question, since Ms. Tina explained to us that it's really the nature of the media about how many died. Is there a possibility for a paradigm shift in the sense of, for the media, that we focus on the disasters averted rather than the actual disasters that happened? Instead of being the top news is the number of people died, maybe the top news would be zero casualty. Is there a possibility that it becomes the big story rather than the other side?
It could be, especially if it's a radical difference from, let's say, the previous disaster. Kaya dati, let's say Yolanda in Tacloban, if before 7,000 people died, and then now, maybe just 20 na lang because they have implemented so and so, that could be a story. But I don't know, it depends on the end of the day. It could be a non-story. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I think, yeah, it's like to understand this, like after the earthquake, like after the bigger disaster story, some of the stories I did, one was for the NPR, it was a video story for NPR, and then the story was about resilience of people, like who's actually trying to build his home. Like he's not waiting for government grant, he's not waiting for any grant, but what he's trying to do is he's trying to build his home himself. So that was a resilient story I produced. Like that was like within a week after the earthquake. And I'm also still following the earthquake story. So like people think I'm still crazy, but like I feel like there are so many stories. One of the recent stories I did was about a women machine worker. So it's, yeah, machine worker. Like normally to have a women machine worker in Nepal is like, it's difficult. And so after the earthquake, like many women were trained to be a machine worker. And this woman, like, because I think around like in mid-20s, she is actually building houses. Like she has built nearly around 100 houses, and she's also leading to build houses. So it's not just like the negative side of the story. Like we are also looking at stories related to innovation, like how they use technology to actually to work during disaster. Like there was Kathmandu Living Labs and many others who were using satellite technology and other technologies to actually help people during disaster. So we use like innovation, women empowerment, and all other angles. Yes, the big story is there, how many casualties, yes, that's the main story, but also to look at different angles. Like we work through those, those lenses as well out there. So some of the stories that I really personally like is about like innovation, about women empowerment. So when we say like to engage with media, the success stories, we tell you to help us locate those characters. Like when I'm working, so I always reach out to NGOs like out there to like what's a great thing happening, and through those discussions, like I come to know about like different characters who tell the stories, like, and that are not just inspired in Nepal. Those stories will inspire around the world.
Okay, is there another question?
Hi, I'm Louis from the NJ. NJ, National Government Agency. My question is, I work for my side work is I'm a social media administrator for the NJAs. My problem here is I'm not generalizing all because some of the medias are my friends, but sometimes there are a few bad apples. For example, yesterday somebody posted in which I will not name. They said that the police, the Navy, and the Coast Guard are there trying to capture the terrorists, but they forgot to tell in the headline that this is a simulation. So what created on that area a panic and confusion among the people. So now, when we can't control them as a government because we don't have any legislation for that. So when I asked my friend, he said that we try to control it to the by convening the kapisanan ng broadcasters. So my question is, that's what he told me. How do we control these bad apples as a group, as a part of our media family? Because it will hurt us as a group. So that's my question.
That's why there's a difference between legitimate press and not legitimate press. But not to say though that we are immune from mistakes. Of course we are. But the difference is that in legitimate media, there's an avenue for redress. So let's say in Inquirer, no, we have a corrections box there. So when there's a factual error, somebody calls and say, oh, you made a mistake in this story, the editors will look, okay, there really was. Then we'll issue the correction the next day. Now, if it's online, they'll correct it online too. If it's legitimate, if it's a question of fact, not a question of angle. So we only correct factual mistakes. Let's say name got wrong, the figure was wrong, things like that. Now, for that particular kind of a story, that should be corrected. Because obviously, a simulation is different from an actual event. So is it radio? Kasi KBP is a KBP.
It was televised on the internet, and
It was done
it was
by...
just a video I saw in the internet, but not in the television. But I think it was broadcast in the television.
It was broadcast on television.
But I saw it on the internet. It was just a screen capture of the.
But who carried it? Which goes? Because if it's legitimate, obviously
It is.
Also, then you should correct it.
Do your organization have sanctions for that kind of reporting?
It's a self-regulatory. It's a self-regulatory organization for broadcast. So I don't know how they do it. Or
that group is for just an example. I'm trying to.
You mean
your organization have sanctions for that kind of reporting?
sanction is internal. So again, there's no in the Philippines. There's no police power on that, obviously, because it's a question of press freedom. So factual error, all of the newspapers should have their own policy about accuracy and fairness. They will all have they will all have it. New York Times has it, Washington Post, Inquirer, Star Bulletin, they all have their own. Now, if that reporter is consistently wrong, obviously the office will have to fire them. It's really just that simple. But if it's a one-off that can be corrected, because that kind of an error is not too serious in the sense that, I mean, it's not a bribe issue, it's not a bribery issue, or maybe outright paid hack something. I don't know the context. But I'm just saying that each legitimate media outlet will have their own way of dealing with that. So the sanctions are internal, not through other government office. And besides, it's your name. So I think the reporter, worth his salt or her salt, will make sure that they are not tainted by inaccuracy or being unfair. So our name is our currency.
We have another question here.
Hi, good morning. I'm Vincent from the Academy. I'm just curious because in case of disasters, I understand that we want to address accuracy. So most of the media, and especially now that we we have the proliferation of social media, everybody can just simply take videos and pictures. I'm just concerned regarding data privacy because, for example, there will be an earthquake scenario, and for example, this is a personal preference that I don't want my face to, go spreading online and please see. How can you probably educate us, the illegitimate media members or the formally trained members to possibly interject the core principles regarding ethical values or data privacy? As citizen reporter, for example.
What do you mean? Citizen reporting for themselves. For themselves. Yeah, for themselves. Just posting, then that's your lookout, right? I mean, if you're gonna do it for yourself, and then that's your lookout. If you don't want your face there, then don't put your face there.
And for example, I want to maybe cover a particular.
You want to cover a particular event for yourself. So your question is, can you?
My question is, what are the principles that we might be taking into consideration so we be aligned with the principles of journalism?
I'll let you do that first.
Okay. Yeah, to like for the ethics in journalism, I mentioned like 5 values out there, especially like to be accurate, also to respect privacy, like it's just basically like, and also to be very objective, like not to be carried out with the personal emotions, but to have 2 sides of the things. Like so, these are basically the ABCs: the accuracy, balance, and credibility in any things you do. And about the privacy, if somebody does not want to be pictured, so then you say, okay, it's okay, we don't take a picture. And if there is a victim or a survivor that should not be taken a picture of, we don't show the picture. Regarding human trafficking after disaster and other stories that I'm working on, I'm not showing the face. We're all changing the names, but we're giving the story because it's important. So we talk to the international standards out there. So I can share you the link and also my presentation where you can go through it.
Internally, we have a rule against minors. Obviously, you don't put a photo of a minor. You don't put a dead person. Yung talagang face shot. Full frontal dead. Pwede yung mga they're like a pile of bodies. But not in their most gory. So no gore, no obviously sensation. So journalism, more than any other thing, the only thing we really carry, what our bosses always say, we are in the business of verification. That is our business, the core of our truth verification. So, as a citizen journalist, I would just stick to that. Just be true. If let's say there's a flood, there's always this joke, there's a flood. To make that story better, you do like this so that the flood will be up to here. Is that true? No, but it's a better story. So if you're a bad journalist, you'll make it, then you'll have a better, still if you have a caldero, for better story purposes. But is that accurate? So what's the accurate way of reporting a flood? An actual flood. So verification, truth. When you're true, there's really you can't go wrong with just staying true to the facts. That's about it. Don't show babies, don't show women, don't show minors. That's basic. And then when there's a domestic dispute, you also don't show let's say women battering, wife battering, things like that. Domestic disputes.
Thank you, ma'am. Another question for Madam.
So here we have a mix of participants from local government, NGOs, private sector, and academia. So you talked a little bit about some of the mistakes you've seen NGOs and local governments make when they talk with the media. What are some of the mistakes you've seen academics make when they talk with the media?
What's the number one mistake of academia with talking to media? Is that they talk in a very academic language. Oh my God, talagang it takes them 5 pages to say something that it's 2 paragraphs. I mean, I'll give you an example now. When I went back to UP, when I went back to UP for masters after 20 years, 20 years out of college. And then I gave my first paper. This is academic, no? I gave my first paper, gave me a low grade. And then I asked the person, the professor, said, what? This is not a grade of yours. and then the guy said, because you write like a journalist. I said, what do you mean I write like a journalist? And then he said, you can't say he said. Okay, so what am I supposed to say? He posited. I mean, that's academia for you. So, like for example, the presentation earlier on Fieldbox, that what's the name of the program? I mean, I was waiting, I was watching it and saying, I could explain this in a much more layman's way. Of course, I don't, the language of science is, I respect it. But it's not for general publication. So it's our job to make that understood. But yun nga, the message, the importance of that gets lost in the academic language, which is what I told that professor. They said, we are in the College of Mass Communication. We are not in the College of Science. So what do you mean? How come I cannot say he said, and I should say he posited? Don't you think those two things mean the same? They said, no, because you should write academically. So there. I had to change my paper into 5-syllable sentences, and I got the grade I wanted. So but the point is, I said something I could have said in a much simpler way, but some people want it posited. So that's my favorite word for that semester. I posit it all the time.
Tell them about the secretary benefit.
Oh yeah, because we were on the ride over here, I was telling them about the dean, the Secretary of Energy, because he used to be the dean of the College of Engineering of UP, electrical engineering. So there were times when we were in a press conference, and for 2 hours he would speak, and then we would have no story. He just said, went on and on about the power situation, the national grid, what do you call that, the interconnection of the grids. So after 2 hours, we didn't get a story to the point that one of my colleagues broke down in tears. Said, and then said, because that's our job, no? We have to give a story by 2 p.m. And then after 2 hours, even after lunch, we still didn't have a story. So she cried. So the secretary frantically got a piece of paper, said, will this do? Said, that will do. So again, it's we have to speak in the same language. So if you want your stories, if you want your publications or academic papers used by people like us, it has to be understood. I don't know why people have a problem with being understood. I mean, lawyers have the same problem. Economists have the same problem. Doctors have the same problem. Parang there's something wrong with just saying he said. Kasi the UP, for example, kasi I always get invited by the University of the Philippines, the community there, to talk about how can we get our scientific papers written about in the national section. So una-una, remove the scientific names. I mean, if it's an oak tree, say so. And then, because sayang, the data in the university, or any university, very rich, but not being discussed because they get buried under all these, scientific names. So, yun lang. I don't know who's going to make the first move.
So, thank you, Raj. Thank you, Mr. Before we go for lunch, we'll have a 2-minute video from the BIARI.
Good morning again. So a lot of people have come to me during breaks and asked me, a lot of questions about BDRF and what we do and how we do it. So let me just maybe do a couple of things, 3 things maybe. I want to show you a quick video on the work, and I think it's the fastest way to get a download of what we do. The second is I'll ask Arvin, who's our mapping officer, to show you a little bit how actual response was for Ompong, Mangkut. It's about 2 weeks ago, and how we deploy and how we map that deployment and the technology that goes on behind it. And then the third will show you a storm coming in, so as you do so, we can actually show you where the storm is headed and what the potential storm paths are, because this is still in the forecast stage of things. So maybe let's roll the video first.
The Philippine Disaster Resilience Foundation is the country's major private sector driver and coordinator for disaster resilience. As an alliance of businesses dedicated to building the disaster risk management capabilities of the private sector in the country, PDRF aims to contribute to the sustainable development and the general welfare of the Filipino people. Since its establishment in 2009, PDRF has worked closely with member companies, government agencies, and other stakeholders in the areas of disaster preparedness, response, and recovery. The PDRF cluster system aims to provide a more robust platform for collaboration and interoperability with key partners from the national to the local level. The 8 clusters champion the core strengths of the Philippine private sector needed in disaster response and rehabilitation. In 2016, PDRF set up a prototype emergency operations center in Makati. And in 2018, it launched its second emergency operations center in Clark, Pampanga. Near to the airport and other access points, the PDRF Clark Emergency Operations Center ensures that its operations will continue, even in a worst-case scenario. At the core of the PDRF Operations Center is the Disaster Information Management System, which uses advanced communication software and technology to help businesses and communities be more prepared for disasters. Harnessing data from local and international sources, PDRF monitors earthquakes, tropical cyclones, volcanic eruptions, and pandemics. On a global and regional scale, PDRF utilizes data from the Pacific Disaster Center's Emergency Operations website, which collates information feeds from reliable agencies around the world. On a local scale, PDRF employs a customized ArcGIS online platform from S3 called Handa, or Hazard and Disaster Analysis for Business Resilience. Through this, PDRF has been able to plot critical infrastructure, track storm paths, and identify areas that are more prone to hazards. When it comes to disaster response, Handa helps zero in on facilities such as evacuation centers and hospitals. Aside from this, PDRF has customized the Handa platform for incident reporting and monitoring, which give member companies an overview of the hazard's impact on their facilities. Today, PDRF continues to pave the way both here and abroad. Through its growing partnerships with member companies and other stakeholders, PDRF becomes one step closer to building a stronger, resilient Philippines.
Okay, so that's a quick snapshot of what we do at PDRF. And I guess the secret sauce behind PDRF is what goes on behind the scenes. You won't see us rushing around, we do a lot of work even when there's no emergency. I would say maybe the bulk of our work goes on before anything happens. I mean, that's what preparedness and prevention and mitigation is all about. So these times, we call peace times, when we invest a lot of our energy in systems, in mapping, in data collection, in scenarios. We do a lot of training, and we run business continuity programs. So let's go to show you just a little bit what we did during Typhoon Ompong, which is Mangkut. It's about 2 weeks. When was Mangkut? 2 weeks ago. How many of you are from northern part of the country affected by Mangkut? What province?
Nueva
Nueva Vizcaya. Okay, you're
Cagayan Valley, sir.
again Valley. Oh, you're direct hit. You're ground zero to Gigarao, no? And yeah, that area. Okay, so it made landfall up northeast corner. So one of the things, the challenges we have for us and for the government actually in the private sector is how do we get people up there? How do we get services restored? How do we move any supplies that we need to move? And one of the difficulties with Mangkut was that it came close also to the harvest season, correct? So, this warning becomes important because you've got to scramble to harvest or you risk losing the crop, okay? So, this is a very important piece of information that you guys need to have. So, in our case, we measure our actions in terms of what are we going to be doing minus day 5, minus day 4, minus day 3, all the way to the time a disaster strikes, and then +1, +2, +3 days, and so on and so forth, with our response and any early recovery efforts. So let's have Arvin show what our Handa system is like, which we built on the ArcGIS platform. It runs on smartphones, it's a phone app, and we give this out to our own members. It's not open to the public, because what we do is when members report any information to us, or when they tell us where they deploy, all they do have to do is key it into the smartphone, and then we will get the information and show you where we have been able to deploy. So, Arvin, what can we show in terms of deployment? Okay, so these are all the pre-disaster. Arvin, what do you explain them?
So what you're seeing right now is a pre-disaster scenario. So this was what the private sector pledged of where they reposition their assets in terms of how they will be responding for Ompong. Then after the disaster, we mapped also all of the response of the private sector.
Okay, so what this illustrates here is that after